Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new, my name is Hanshittu. I actually play too much. My name is Hanshittu. I'm British, I'm young, I'm 22. Basically, okay, let me start again. Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Hannah. My channel's focus is productivity, personal development, being your best self, and lifestyle, baby. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, then make sure you subscribe and check out my other videos. And yeah, let's get into it. Today's video, I'm basically going to be filming like a review slash what I've picked up from Grace Beverley's book, Working Hard, Hardly Working, How to Achieve More, Stress Less, and Feel Fulfilled. So if you don't know who Grace Beverley is, then get to know, like, I feel like I've watched her since when she was in her like first year of uni, and now she graduated uni a few years ago. She has like multiple businesses, entrepreneur. I'm pretty sure she's like been a millionaire. Went to Oxford, and like she basically was able to achieve so much and so many things at the same time, and I've just always loved her. I used to watch her YouTube. She doesn't really do YouTube too much anymore, but I feel like she is definitely a person if you're looking for like advice like how to be productive and that type of stuff. So this is essentially why I picked up her book and I read it, and I really enjoyed it. The reason that I love the book so much is I feel like if you're someone who's read a lot of like self-development kind of books and like self-help books, let's put them in that category, like making money, how to be successful, all of that type of stuff, I think a lot of the time it's people that I can't relate to that are writing these books. These are people that are white males, and obviously I can't relate to that really, if I'm being honest. And like a lot of the tips, yes, they are useful, however I feel like some of them are not practical, and they were written like they're quite old books, so like it's not as relevant to now, whereas this book is like, I think it was only written in, I think it was finished in lockdown like 2020, I want to say. It was published 2021, so it's very recent and up to date and like in with the time, so like a lot of the points are relevant, whereas like some of the old books is kind of like not as relevant anymore. Of course she is white, but she is a female, and I think a thing that I really love about Grace is she's very aware of her privilege. Like she speaks by it all the time, like where I think even on the Diary of a CEO podcast, she went on there and she was like, you know, like I understand I'm an able-bodied white female that grew up in a grey area, went to Oxford. Like she's very aware of her privilege, so I think that also creates more kind of like realistic expectations and makes you realize, okay, like she has got really far. However, she also recognizes that she probably had a massive advantage compared to other people, so that's another reason that I really like her slash the book. Her being a female as well is very like, because obviously females business is, I feel like it's harder, so yeah, a female watching this, then I feel like I really recommend reading the book if you haven't, based off that, coming from that angle. The thing that she does really well in the book is she makes practical tips. I feel like a lot of these kind of self-help books are kind of written in a way that's like, you know, like save your money and don't go outside, or like just work, whereas this book obviously it's about working and being productive, but it's also very realistic tips on how to like find what works for you, because it's not a one size fits all, and she basically makes it very clear in this book that actually no, you need to find out what works for you. She definitely focuses on kind of like self-care at the same time and like mental health, and I think this is again why like some of the more recent like self-help books are kind of keeping up with the time. Idea of, you know, self-care and like mental health has become a lot more spoken about, which I like, so that's a really good thing, I'd say. So I'm gonna touch on like four things that I picked up from the book. So one of the points that basically Grace makes is that hustle culture is only glamorous when it is a choice. When you think about people, you know, that are pretty comfortable and can choose to like work harder, it's like, oh, you know, like I'm hustling, I'm grinding, and they have maybe like a social media job that's deemed as more glamorous, whereas if it's a job that's like someone is literally just trying to make ends meet, picking up part-time jobs here, it's not really deemed as like, oh, like, you know, glamorous, and they're hustling. And I think that links into like this whole thing of hustle culture and how like it can be toxic, because it kind of makes it seem that, oh, like you're only really hustling if your job is like making a lot of money, or if you're doing kind of like a job that's, you know, very like glamorous in that sense. Basically, sometimes just don't look at anybody else, because this is how I've interpreted it anyway. When you're looking at other people and you're like, oh, like their hustling looks fun, like you kind of sometimes think, oh, maybe I'm not working hard enough. I think hustle culture as well, that are like, you're only working hard if there's results or if it looks a certain way. And I think even the way social media portrays it, and like even me included, let's say my new Instagram where I'm posting our like little vlogs in the office and the aesthetics and stuff, sometimes it can just seem that like it's all fun and games and like you're in the wrong job, or like you're not working hard because it doesn't look good or doesn't fit this certain aesthetic. But really, like, that's not the case. Like, people are working hard, and unfortunately not everyone, like, people can be doing, let's say, a more standard job and they're not making as much, and it's like, oh, you know, like you should be working harder, whereas really that's not the case. Like, so I think it's very important to understand that you're working hard whether there's the results or not. Like, a lot of the time, if you're putting in the hours, like, you are working hard. So I think it's just important to like bear that in mind. Sorry, I got my cold brew coffee, my cold brew latte, and it is absolutely bussing. Okay, the next point that I picked up is women who are successful business-wise are only deemed successful when they're like a family woman. So they have like a family, they're married and they have kids. Otherwise, it's kind of deemed as like, yeah, it's successful, but you know, like, what about your kids? They won't, which I completely agree with, by the way. If you think about it, when there's a successful man and let's say he just isn't married, doesn't have any kids, and he's older, no one is really like, in interviews and stuff, you see it all the time, no one's gonna be like, oh, you know, like, where's your wife, where's your kids? Whereas when it's a woman, let's say she's like 30, 40, single, doesn't have any kids, doesn't speak about it, they'll kind of be like, oh, you know, it's successful, but you know, like, got your eye on anyone, any kids? And it's like, you're only really deemed successful when you're kind of also having like a romantic and social life. And I think that's when it kind of like, it's the whole thing of like woman in the workplace, like, it's just not, you're not successful until you're doing your kind of maternal duties. They won't just look at you for the work that you're producing in the workplace and being successful at the job. It's always about, oh, you know, like, where's your family? And it's like, brother, what has this got, like, what's the relevance here? Fun little fact, I know some places are funny about like women going on maternity leave, like planning to have children, even though the only reason we're all here is because somebody brought us into the world by having a child. Anyway, let's not get into that too tough. But like, I didn't realize that it was actually illegal to be asked in a job interview, like, do you plan on having kids? Like, it's very inner, but I didn't actually know it's a law. So in the UK, if you didn't know, that's actually illegal because it's grounds for discrimination, which, fun fact. But yeah, it's very much this thing of like, you know, if you don't have a family, you're not quite successful. It's kind of like, oh, there's not something wrong with you, but kind of like you don't have it all. And it's this kind of society's idea of success, whereas like, I feel like success is an individual thing, and it's like, what do you base it as success? Like, not every woman wants to have a family, which I think now is very much like a thing of like, people are being more open about it. Like, you know, like, I don't want to have kids. Me, I want my kiddies, don't you worry. I want my little youths and a husband. But obviously for everyone, that's not everyone's case, and that is fine. But that's got nothing to do with their career success, which I think people like to stick and merge together. When it's women, they want to put that on you, whereas it's like, why don't you just look at them for the work they're doing and not worry about their romantic life? Success is individual, and don't basically let society put their idea of success on your head, is what I have gathered from that point. In terms of actually the being productive part of the book, she basically talks about, so basically like a flow zone of work, when you're basically in the flow, quote unquote, which is basically when you're just deep in your work, you're not really distracted, not thinking about anything else, getting into that zone. So a lot of the time, like, when we're working, we're not really working, we're kind of like on our phone or not really. But she basically says like, kind of like a method of forcing yourself to just sit there and get in the flow. So I feel like the beginning bit is the hardest. Then you're in the flow for a certain amount of time, when you're just actually, you've got past the distraction bit, when you're easily irritable, got into the work, and then there's a bit where you then start to get distracted again, and then you're starting to come out of the flow. And she basically talks about how to get into this stage, and then basically also figuring out for yourself, so what is it that triggers you? So what is it that, you know, gets you into the flow? Is it like watching a productive video? Is it reading something before? Is it doing something completely unrelated? And then also getting out of the zone, it's kind of like, what is it that gets you distracted again, and how long does that take? Not everyone's flow time is the same. Some people can stay focused for an hour, some people can stay focused for 30 minutes. So like, it's just trial and error and kind of figuring out what works for you. But it does take like intention and sitting there and like actually being like, okay, I'm actually going to try and get into the flow. So genuinely practical tip, not just, you know, just be productive, just work. It's actually saying, okay, this is how you can try and see like what works for you. Another thing in this book that is, I think is just really realistic. Sometimes it's hard, especially when you're one of those people who you actually want to be productive, but like it's just you feel sluggish, or like you're easily distracted, like you just struggle to. Like some people just do it. There's like a whole chapter, the art of doing nothing, and she talks about nothings, where it's basically just, you can't really plan it as much as you can plan, yeah, I'm gonna do this and this today. Sometimes you just don't feel like doing shit. You just are like, I just don't want to do anything, and just allow it and just do your nothing. What she then goes on to say is kind of like keeping track of when it happens. So like keeping track of like what causes that, and then basically like working with that. So if, you know, around the time of your month you just really, you feel very sluggish, you can anyway do like all your most productive stuff like the other kind of 3 weeks, and then when it gets to that week, have like the chill week. Put a little table in the book like this, which I thought was, let me get my face, which I thought was really cool. And the table's basically like things that make me feel good and things that make me feel bad, and it's basically just putting like things that make you feel good, like having a list. And I've actually started doing this. It was actually a friend that told me to do it, and then I literally read it and I was like, oh my god, the books are the same thing, so it aligned quite well. But I basically, in my notes, I have like a list of things that make me feel good, like going to the supermarket, especially in the evenings, and just doing a really slow food shop. It just makes me feel really calm, which is so weird, but that is something that makes me feel good. Basically learning about yourself, learning what you dislike, what you like, what energizes you, and this whole thing of like personal development and like self-discovery. Like I think people think it's something that just like, you know, happens overnight, or you just already know yourself, whereas really it actually takes time and effort to genuinely like pay attention. Okay, like when I do this, it just doesn't make me feel good. Everyone is different, and I think it's fine. Like definitely think try things, but like not everything is for everyone, and that's fine. And I think this is basically what this section is about, like finding out like yourself. And the whole theme of the book is like basically finding out what works for you and what's going to be productive, and also not killing yourself. Like you can't come and die. So that was kind of like my summary of the book and points that I thought were just like really good that I picked up from the book. I know I've just been like waffling on, but I recommend go getting yourself the book. I will be reading it again. I'm really trying to get into my reading. I'm a really slow reader, but I'm forcing myself. I'd say if you're someone who is a procrastinator, or like you really want to be that productive person, but like it's just actually bringing yourself to do it, it's just so different. Aren't as productive as you want to be, but you also don't want to kill yourself, because life is for the living. Get this book, highly recommend. Yeah, so thank you so much for watching this video. If you'd like me to make any other book reviews, kind of like book recommendations, let me know. I have read quite a few like self-help books. Yeah, I hope that was somewhat insightful and you enjoyed me rambling on. I will catch you guys in my next video. Bye.